Good evening, everybody. I was just telling some of my friends that we're live on Facebook, but for those of us who are over a certain age, we're like, okay, whatever. But it's very exciting, very exciting. So once again, we're here with these extraordinary women. Thank you. Liza and I have collaborated many, many times over the years, and every time we do something, we then plan something else. So this is the something else that we planned from the last time we did this. Liza will introduce everyone. We're thrilled to have you guys here. Thank you. You're doing amazing, amazing work. Keep it up. Today is International Day of the Girl, so we're celebrating that as well. And have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Thank you, Al. I'm all tangled. Okay, so it's really great to be here. Thanks, guys, for coming out. I just married off our oldest daughter last weekend on Sunday, so this is a piece of cake. No, it was really wonderful. We had a great time. It was wonderful. Thank you for coming. So this is the second of two panels that we did that in conjunction with the exhibit upstairs, Funny Ladies of New Yorkers, Funny Ladies of the New Yorker, Then and Now. And if you haven't seen it, you can go up after the panel if you want to see it. The first panel we did was a huge success, and so Elle said, let's do another one. So the first panel was more veteran cartoonists that had been around a while, and then we also had the cartoon editor, Emma Allen, who was in the audience this time, having her glass of wine. And this time I decided maybe we should have some more newer, younger cartoonists to talk about what it's like to be at the New Yorker now in this day and age, what's going on now, what's it like to be a cartoonist for the New Yorker now. So we'll get into that. I'm not a newcomer, as you know. I began in 1979, and when I didn't really think about gender in terms of my work. I just was a cartoonist. I didn't think I was a woman cartoonist, and I still don't think that. I think we're all cartoonists, and we just happen to be women. But around 1999, I started thinking more seriously about why are there not more women doing this fun work. And so I started looking into it, and I spent a year in the archives researching, and I ended up writing a book called Funny Ladies. This is about 10 years ago I did this. And now it's having a resurgence of interest about the subject, because we all need humor right now. And humor from women is particularly important right now. But I really wanted to understand who those women were and why there were fewer women. So this is my book. But what I found was there was a woman cartoonist in the first issue of the New Yorker in 1925, which was great to see. And ever since then, the numbers have sort of ebbed and flowed, and back in the 30s there were maybe about 8 women coming and going. And then in the 60s there were none. And I have lots of theories about that, which I won't go into here, but it's kind of interesting. And then in 1973, they hired a new cartoon editor, Lee Lorenz, and he brought in Mary Carlin and Roz Chast and myself in the 70s. And ever since then, it's sort of been growing slowly, the number of women drawing cartoons at the New Yorker magazine. And now the New Yorker magazine has a woman cartoonist, Emma Allen, and the New Yorker has more women drawing cartoons than ever before. And last year, yeah, you can blow. Last year, I noticed that there was one issue when there were more cartoons by women than by men, and that's what sparked me to think maybe I should do an exhibit about the women at the New Yorker who draw cartoons and have drawn cartoons. So that's what this exhibit is all about. It was a catalyst to make me want to do that. And I also like to say about cartoons and women and humor and women is that my point of doing a book about it, my point of doing an exhibit about it is not to say that we're all alike. I don't want to ghettoize women. I'm just saying that we're here. I want to redress the balance and make people see that there are women doing this and they're doing it really well. So that's why I did this exhibit and that's why I did the book. So that's enough for me. I want to go now introduce our panelists. And what we're going to do is, I know that each panelist has a group of 10 cartoons that they sent me, and I put them in a PowerPoint. And each of them are going to have a chance to go through their cartoons and talk about their work and about their frustrations and their creative process and their, their love life or whatever. And then each person will have a chance, and then at the end we'll all have a conversation together. So this way they can talk about their work. And I asked them just to share work that is not just New Yorker work too. So we can talk about what it's like to be a New Yorker cartoonist, because it's not all that easy. You might think it is, but it's really not. You have to do a lot of different things. So anyway, Sara Lautman is a cartoonist and illustrator who lives in Baltimore. Sara is over here. A new collection called I Love You will be published by Retrofit, of course. I like Retrofit better. Big Planet Comics in 2018. She's a regular contributor to The New Yorker since March 2016, among other publications, and she's on the faculty at the Maryland Institute College of Art. Amy Hwang is a cartoonist who have appeared in The New Yorker since 2010. Born and raised in Texas, Amy moved to New York to study architecture at Barnard College. She started drawing cartoons while in college for the Columbia Daily Spectator. She currently lives in Scarsdale with her daughter. Amy Kurzweil is a New Yorker cartoonist and the author of Flying Couch, a graphic memoir. It was a New York Times Editor's Choice and Kirkus Best Memoir of 2016. Her writing, comics, and cartoons have also appeared in the Huffington Post, The Believer magazine, Narrative magazine, Lenny Letter, The Owl, The Toast, Catapult, and many other places. She teaches comics at FIT and elsewhere. She lives in Brooklyn. She's a contributor to The New Yorker since April 2016. And Emily Flake has been cartooning for The New Yorker since 2008. You're an old hand at this now. She's the author of Mama Tried, Dispatches from the Seedy Underbelly of Modern Parenting. She lives in Brooklyn with her husband and daughter. She sometimes tells jokes on stage, which we hope you'll do tonight. And also I want to remind you that we're going to have a book signing afterwards, because some of us have books that you'd like to purchase, so we'll probably do that downstairs where there's wine and food. So anyway, the first person, I believe, is Sara. So I'm going to give you the clicker, Sara.
Hello. Hi. All right, so this is my name.
Did I spell it right?
Yes, perfect. This is a cartoon about clothes. I must think about clothes even more than I am aware of, because I end up producing so many cartoons about fashion and clothes. So this one is about rompers, which have been like a cool style. Like they've been cool for like 5 or 6 years, so I'm not like on the edge of anything. This is from last spring, and there are these two people standing in an interior, and one of them standing in the corner looking upset, and the second person is romping around in a romper. And the caption says, "Ever since you got that romper, you never want to stand stiffly in the corner with me anymore." That's a serious betrayal, but this person is happy, so that person needs to let it go. This is a stupid cartoon, and it's a really very unoriginal one. I mean, essentially, thank you. I had one friend who really liked this cartoon, and she was being nice to me and complimenting me on it. But part of the compliment, she was saying how she did a double take, because she was like, "Wait, is it really that stupid?" So there's this long sort of umbilical item stretching back into the horizon of this desert. It's a pretty arbitrary place for them to be, but you had to see the whole umbilical cord. And this person in the front just climbed out of the this thing, and they're being romantically propositioned by a second person with a bouquet of flowers, very nice. And the kind rejection is, God, you know what, you're sweet, but it just got out of a long thing. It did just get out of a long thing. Me, find out? Yes.
Looks like you.
Yeah, that's it. That's how I draw myself.
Did you go up with the caption first and then draw the long thing, or the long thing and then the caption?
I just thought of the whole thing at once. There is an autobiographical element to this, and it's like really predictable. I don't even have to tell you. This is a cartoon that I tried to sell a bunch of times to the New Yorker, and it never got picked up. And I sold it to another publication in Philadelphia, which is this weird little magazine called the Philadelphia Secret Admirer. And I love this cartoon. This was a cartoon, there's some that I'm sure we all have, and you just think they're the best.
Oh my God.
And you just keep pitching them, and like, whichever editor you're working with is just like I know you really like this. Like, no. So this is about these two people who are playing tic-tac-toe together, and they all put all of their X's and O's in the middle box of the tic-tac-toe, which is not how you're supposed to play. And one of them is looking a little annoyed, and she just says, I think we need to spend some time apart, which they do. A lot about relationships here. This is also, I think, like the funniest thing ever. And again, I've never sold this to anyone. And no one is interested in taking this, but it's so good. I did like a bunch with tragedy and comedy masks making out with each other. I just like they just are going to someday. And so they're at this party, outdoor party or something, like I guess like a barbecue. And somebody notices them like doing a PDA situation, and they're whispering, drama, you know, that's what that stands for. Yeah, I just put into the slideshow all the ones that I finally wanted to like have their day in the sun and was never able to sell. This is a witch trial, you know, like the Salem witch trial, but it's all witches. That's the twist. So it's like in the Crucible, and this witch is accusing this witch of doing something witchy. But the crazy reversal is she's accusing her of being a fake witch, because they're all real witches. So this is the angry one, and she's pointing and shouting. She's saying, Goody Morbida faked flying into my room at night, and fake bewitched me. It was all a big fake. And now she's fake crying. Like to get sympathy. This I sold to the New Yorker, and that's great. It hasn't rang it, but I'm just proud of it, so I'm going to put it in this slideshow. And it's just this conductor, and she's conducting the orchestra. I tend to draw a lot of orchestras and marching bands because I like to draw instruments. And my parents or my dad is a classical musician, and they're both classical music fans. So like I grew up with just like a lot of like posters for classical music events, and a lot of the illustrators that I admired early on would do that kind of work. So it feels formative. But anyway, this conductor is conducting and yelling, "You there, start playing, now, yes, great, keep playing, no you, yes, you, the oboe, go, now, great." Usually they don't speak.
Sarah, I have to make a point. Just maybe it's obvious to people, but you said she was conducting, so it's a woman conductor, and you normally would expect it to be a man, right? But you made it a woman.
Yeah. Really controversial move. I put her in that beautiful suit, and you can tell by the tiny little bun that what we have here is a female conductor.
It's 2018.
Yeah, right? Come on. It's the 90s. Oh, yeah. The 90s. Well, honestly, like, she has a man bun, and I have a man bun. So we're expanding our definitions of what buns can be. And Liza said to include some of our other work, and I was so greedy about taking the space to put in my New Yorker cartoons that were rejected that I didn't put in as many comics as maybe I should have, because I also do a lot of like longer sequential work and sort of more loosely constructed visual storytelling. But I put in this poster because I do a lot of poster design, and I really enjoy that. This is a poster for a show here in New York for the band Elizabeth and the Catapult, and I just made it with all these penguins on it, and I wanted you all to see that at the same time. Oh, this is an example of some comics work that I did. This was for the web version of the New Yorker for Daily Shouts, and it was a comics essay about the Far Side. And I feel like that's maybe a lot to unpack, but it's also the story of a tattoo I got that I have on my arm here. So maybe I can talk about that a little later. I don't want to take up too much more time.
But I want to ask you to just explain to people who may not know Daily Shouts versus New Yorker cartoons.
Oh, sure. Daily Shouts is an online arm of Shouts and Murmurs, which is the humor section of the New Yorker, and has been for a long time. And I think Shouts started just like when Emma got there, and it's really cool. And you can do all different kinds of things on it. It doesn't have to be that specific New Yorker house style format. You can do longer stories or just writing.
And historically it's been a writing space, but now it's a graphic narrative space too.
Writing came first, but now it has drawings. And this was a cool, usually 9 times out of 10 it's satire, but sometimes there will also be an autobiographical piece, and I think we've all done stuff like that. And this fell more into that category, and it was also like a little bit of cultural criticism about this sort of semi-obscure moment in history, the comic The Far Side, which probably if you guys are all here, you're into cartoons, so you know what The Far Side is. And I was very happy to be able to sell this to the New Yorker, because I just really didn't think it fit as a shout, and then I got to do it, and it was cool. Here's another cartoon. This was in a comics magazine called Smoke Signal that the comic book store Desert Island has produced for kind of a long time now, I think since the early 2000s. So this was in a recent issue. This person is praying, and their prayer is, if my faith should ever weaken, please help me replace it with some other interest, ceramics or romantic love or something. Here's another poster, very proud of my posters. This is for a band called Screaming Females and Vacation, and they were on tour together. And I drew this person sort of squatting, drinking water from a lake with a long straw, and then there's this kind of scary guy coming in from the right. One of the cool things about poster work is you don't get paid very much, so you're giving a lot of creative latitude, and it's an easy, if anybody, I'm telling you how to exploit me, is to read this kind of stuff and not pay very much, but I'll love it. I think that's everything.
Pretty much did come from a friend's sister whose cat was lost. I guess it escaped, and she was like, I can't find my cat. And 2 weeks later, it did come back. It returned. So obviously it left and it came back. It was fine. So I kind of took it a step further. The caption here is, I vary her diet with a wide variety of pasta shapes. This one is very autobiographical. I'm almost certain I said those exact words to one of my friends who was visiting. And at the time, my daughter was probably between the ages of 1 and 2. And she's eating solids, but she primarily ate pasta. And I felt very guilty just giving her pasta every night. So I actually did start to give her a variety of shapes. I can't decide whether to nap right now or in 10 minutes. This one was very popular, and I'm actually not sure why. It's one of those things that I thought of. I think when I'm coming up with ideas, I usually do need to nap at some point because I get tired. It's very hard work. And I think one of the things I was thinking was, well, should I try and come up with more ideas right now, or should I nap right now and then wake up and come up with more ideas? So it was actually, whenever I have thoughts about napping, it actually works better as a cartoon if I have cats saying them, because it makes more sense to people, I think, than if I had a person saying that.
Do you have cats?
No, I don't have any. People ask me that a lot. They think I love cats because, I mean, I do love cats, but they think I must have cats because I have a cat-free poster in my Etsy shop, and I spent maybe 2 years, like, drawing all these different cats, like, and I was like looking up all the breeds online, and but it was just something, a goal I had set for myself. Like, I'm gonna do a cat-free poster, and I did it. So. Am I pushing the right button? Yeah. It is this one, right? Oh, did I go?
No, I did it.
All right. Okay. I hope you sat me next to someone who wants to hear all about my bathroom renovation. And this actually kind of did happen to me. I would be the person on the left, because I remember a long time ago I was renovating my kitchen and bathroom in my New York apartment, and it pretty much took over my whole life. And I think I did have kind of a crisis in the middle of it at some point. But I do remember at one point I was meeting a friend for dinner, and this is pre-online ordering everything. And I had gone and picked up a shower rod, and I brought it into the restaurant, just leaned it against the wall like it was no big deal, and she was looking at it like, what is that? And it's true, it's like a 6-foot shower rod. You know? And I would never do that now, but at the time, it was maybe 20 years ago I did this. And not the cartoon, but the whole shower rod at the restaurant. My child has special wants. And yet this is another cartoon where I have no idea why it's that as funny as I have a child who has special needs, so I just kind of played off the whole wants and needs. So from my perspective, I was like, I don't even know if this is funny. because some people have kids who have needs that are special, and then this woman's just coming in saying that my child has special wants. But people like it, so. I skipped one.
You skipped one.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and go back. I don't know if maybe I'm pushing the button too hard. I find it comforting to have off-Broadway plays in the background.
It's very New York.
Yeah, it's very New York, and it was pretty much inspired by all my friends who like to have TVs on in the background. And they find it very comforting, they need the noise. And as somebody who doesn't like to have a TV on in the background, I, of course, came up with something more absurd, which, and I think maybe some people would find this very comforting. Like plays. Demand for reclaimed barn wood causes wave of new barn construction. And this one actually came, I used to work in the architecture department for a clothing company, and we were responsible for picking, the fixtures and the pieces of furniture in the shops. And because we were a very sustainable company, we were always looking for kind of eco-friendly materials, one of which was reclaimed barn wood. And we were always ordering reclaimed barn wood for things. So this is kind of how I imagined it, because sometimes you would order reclaimed barn wood and the price has gone up because the demand is find nowadays. There, I got it. This one doesn't have a caption, but it's a woman, she's walking through a little small room labeled rest area. Behind her, there's an arrow pointing to the left. It says home, and then to the right, it says work. And a lot of people felt this was a commentary on, I guess, moms who watch their kids at home, and so the work never really ends, and the only rest they get is that in between. And for me, I do have a kid, but for me, it was actually at home was sort of drawing cartoons freelance, and then going to work, like, staying up late, drawing my cartoons, getting my batch out, and then waking up a few hours later to go to my job 9 to 5. And I guess my rest area was my commute in my car for about 20 minutes. But it does work for people who have kids also, because that is work.
But you
as
since
well.
quit your job, so you now are full-time.
I did. I quit my job back in August, not too long ago, so I'm full-time now. So now it would be like work and home would be pointed in the same direction, and no rest area. Of course I love you more than cheese. What a silly question. In fact, cheese and I are just friends. Nothing's going on between cheese and me. I'm trying to think, this idea was actually, I initially, in my initial, my sketchbook, it was actually a mom talking to her child. But then it was something, it wasn't those last two sentences, but then it actually started to feel a little mean to me. So I was like, oh no, I'll have her talking to her boyfriend instead. And for this one I actually did have to Google things that cheaters say. So that's what they do say, nothing's going on, or we're just friends. But of course, cheaters insist. I used to think you were kinky, but I'm beginning to wonder if you just aren't attracted to me. This one's not autobiographical. I don't do very many sexual or bedroom cartoons, but I was thinking, well, I'll draw a woman with one of those sleep masks on, and then the rest just sort of came in. I started just drawing more and more stuff. So. This one is not a cartoon, it's a thank you card. This is one of the thank you cards I sell on my Etsy shop, and I started drawing thank you cards for teachers, aides, special needs professionals, therapists, mainly because I needed them for my own use, for my daughter's, all of the professionals who work for my daughter. And if you have a special needs child, you would know that it's probably akin to living in a doorman building at the holiday times. You have to give everybody a small gift. And so, because I'm a mom, I don't have time to make anything. I mean, I had time to make the cards, I guess, but I usually just buy a gift card, but I need to stick it in something. So I wanted to make them something more personal, but at the same time, as I'm a cartoonist, I was thinking I have to monetize these. So I'm not going to draw for nothing. And it actually worked out well, because I feel because it was something I did need, I couldn't find in the market, I just made it myself, and people do order them. They're actually, I guess, for me, it seems like they sell a lot. And this is, I started, since I've left my job, I've had a little more time to do cartoons. So one of the things I've been doing is drawing more personal cartoons on Instagram, and I'm starting to explore more long form. And the reason I do it is because I think it's because after working for companies or for people for so many years, I just want to do what I want to do. I don't want to, I just want to do my own thing. But I did this one. She's thinking, I'm going to be poor. I'm going to run out of money. I haven't gotten anything done. I'm going to have to ask for my job back. And that's actually something I was thinking probably a month after I left my job, thinking like I was kind of ill-prepared for leaving my job. Maybe I made a big mistake. But usually when you have negative thoughts, they say, turn it around, think the opposite. But I couldn't really. So what I did was draw myself at work. And so she's at work, and she's thinking, I'm going to be old, and all I'll have to show for my life is my 401k. I won't have gotten anything done. I have to leave this job. And those are all things I did think when I was in my job. So, but it's kind of a sad cartoon, because then you're in this endless cycle of like problems.
How many of you use Instagram a lot to share your work? Yeah. Me too, but does it get you work? Does it get you work? Some indirectly?
It's actually not big work,
Okay.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me. I'll say a little bit about how I got into cartooning before I show you my cartoons. I actually was a writer first, and then I started working on a long book, my graphic memoir, which I'll talk about. I didn't think that I would do cartoons. It wasn't something that I thought I could do. But after doing this really long 300-page book that took like 8 years, I thought I wanted to do something that doesn't take 8 years and like finish something. So I started experimenting with doing shorter things, and then just got shorter and shorter and shorter. And then my boyfriend, who's here, had the idea that I should be a New Yorker cartoonist, and I was like, that's insane. Like, people, like old men do that in caves or something like that. But then, I don't know, somehow it happened, so it's very, very cool to be here. So I'll share my cartoons with you. Okay. Alright, this is a scientist looking into a microscope, and he says, kind of makes you feel large and significant, doesn't it? So this is a cartoon that's in the show. I suspect there's like a little bit of a gender thing going on in this cartoon. That wasn't my intention. When I came up with the idea, it was sort of more of a simple reversal of, someone looking at the night sky and thinking they feel small. In this case, they feel large. But then I drew a man somewhat unconsciously, and then I was like, I don't know. Then I put a woman there kind of like looking at him quizzically, like maybe she wouldn't be saying that. I don't know. Okay. This is the first cartoon. So I'll read it for you. Self-driving car, self-conscious car is thinking, would I look better in red? And the self-actualized car is saying, I'm going back to school. So this is the first cartoon I sold, and a secret about this cartoon is that it used to have 4 self-blanking cars, and then Bob Mankoff was like, you can't do 4, like it's 3. Little 3s. And I think he was right. The fourth one was between self-conscious and self-actualized, and it was self-selling car. And the car was saying, I brake for children. But it's better without it. So. This is robot cat passes Turing test. So this one requires one lap. This one requires knowledge of what a Turing test is, which is that a Turing test is a test to determine whether or not a robot has human levels of intelligence. And so a person will communicate with the robot via a computer. And so I actually have a robot cat, which if you follow me on Instagram and look at my stories, sometimes I post stories of the robot cat. It's like a companion for the elderly, supposedly, and like it purrs and like raises a hand creepily and like rolls back and meows. So I don't know, I was just thinking like, how would you know if a robot cat was like passing for a real cat? And the answer is it would do exactly the same thing as a real cat. This is a doctor saying, "It takes a while to kick in, but this should do nothing." I styled this doctor after my mother a little bit. My mother's a psychologist, and she helped me come up with this cartoon, sort of. She likes to say that she helps me with my cartoons more than she does. But she's very interested in helping me, and she's always sending me ideas. And I think we were spending time together, and she had hurt her thumb. She'd slammed her thumb into a door, and it was purple. And so we were just riffing on what she could do, and we came up with this idea, which is she did nothing. There's nothing for her to do about a bruised thumb. Okay, this is executive MFA, and it's a man in a boardroom, kind of bored looking, giving a PowerPoint on the poetry of PowerPoint. So I actually did get an MFA in fiction writing, and don't really have anything to say about it. I don't know. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so here's a bookstore, and it says 3 p.m. meet the author, 3:10 tweet negative reviews at the author, 3:25 meet the author's disappointed parents, 3:30 meet the author's spouse who has raised the author's children on a single earner's salary. This is somewhat autobiographical because I did write a book and publish it, and it was very exciting, and then I learned about some of the other sides of writing a book, which is, people on the internet, and then, not making any money, basically. But you should definitely still buy my book. Okay, chess Halloween. I don't know what to say about this. I feel like I find it hard to come up with Halloween costumes that aren't offensive.
What are your Halloween costumes?
It's I feel like I'm making fun. If I dress up like someone, I'm am I making fun of them? You know what I mean?
Like zombies?
I went as Amy. I went as Amy Winehouse last year.
Well,
and
she's
then
dead, so that.
Well, I was is it too soon?
It could be a loving homage.
Yeah, I hope that it was, but it's possible that someone would misinterpret me.
I mean, there's an ocean between us and her family. I wouldn't worry.
Yeah, anyway. Okay. This is where the wild things summer. So it's the wild things summer. This one I'm not a trained artist. I didn't study drawing or illustration or anything, and I'm often sort of self-conscious about that, and will text my friends, some of whom are here, how do I draw this? And I don't really know perspective and things like that. I struggle with and feel self-conscious about, but I just thought this drawing was so nice, so I'm really proud of myself. And it's helpful that I just copied one of the greatest illustrators of all of children's books, Mary Sendak. But that's actually a really good way to learn how to draw, is copy other people's work. And sometimes I trace the cartoons of other New Yorker cartoonists to help me get a setting. I just literally put my piece of paper on the computer and trace a boardroom or something if I don't know how to draw it. So I hope that's okay.
That's how I started, was tracing James Thurber.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't know where the eye is.
I love that you're putting it towards the screen.
I know.
Nothing to do with that.
Liza, and she goes over.
electricity. Maybe it's out of batteries or something. Oh, okay. This one says we're looking for something that says death to the patriarchy. This is not a New Yorker cartoon, but it is sort of meta New Yorker cartoon because I styled these women after women from New Yorker cartoons of the past. I can't remember exactly who I was trying to imitate, but sort of like a type, like high society lady, and I don't know, just thought, what would these women say if you put them in Hot Topic? And, yeah. Oh, so I'll talk a little bit about other work that I do. So I write, so I wrote like a long book, and then I started to do really short cartoons, and then I moved to the middle and also do graphic essays. And I'm working on this series for The Believer magazine called Technophilia, and it's basically, I've done 2 installments so far, but I visit some sort of, or explore some sort of technological phenomenon. It could be something as sort of basic as telephones, like my first graphic essay was about visiting this little telephone museum in Ellsworth, Maine, with this old guy who was like obsessed with all these old phones, and I wrote about him and the museum and telephones and my relationship to the phone. And in this one, I visited the Museum of Jewish Heritage, which has this exhibit of these avatars of these Holocaust survivors who tell their story. And so they're holographic avatars, and you should go. It's, we're in New York, so it's a pretty interesting exhibit. But all my grandparents are Holocaust survivors in one sense. My grandmother, on my mom's side, I wrote about in my first book, and she's still around, and she tells her story a lot, and I told her story in my book, among other things. But I was thinking, what will it be like when the survivors die and we don't have actual people to tell their stories anymore? And I was like amazed that this exhibit exists, that we have like these avatars of these people. And so I took kind of a pilgrimage to this museum and wrote about it. So things like that, short, like 7-page essays. Okay, so this is my second graphic memoir that I'm working on. So my first one, I don't know if the first one is in here. Is it?
No, that's your last one.
Okay. There was a slide about my first one, but you can just visit me and look through it because it's here. So it's called Flying Couch, and it's about 3 generations of women in my family: my mother, me, and my grandmother. And I tell her survival story and also stories about the relationships in my family. So that's sort of like how I got into comics and cartoons, is writing that book. It took a really long time. So now I'm writing another book. It's called Artificial, a Love Story, and it's about my father's side of the family, my father and his father. And my father's father also has a pretty interesting history. He came from Vienna. He was a classical musician. And he arrived in America, raised a family, died pretty young. And my father has been saving all these artifacts from his father in the storage unit because he has this idea, speaking of avatars, that he wants to create this avatar of his father's identity, which would be like this embodied digital identity that he can interact with. And he's like planning to do this. So I'm chronicling that process and reflecting on what it means from my perspective, and so this is not cartoons and somewhat far afield from what we've been talking about, but this is kind of what I'm working on now. And that's it.
Thank you.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Jeez, that would have been awesome, right? Yeah, I do a lot of pratfalls. It's kind of my thing. All right, let's see. So this one, the caption here is, I need something sturdy enough to withstand the scrutiny of other parents. I don't know who here also has kids, but yeah, the scrutiny of other parents is a real thing, and I don't even live in Park Slope. Yeah, there's judging. Judging happens. caption here is, I'm sorry, but refusing to use an Oxford comma isn't really grounds for divorce. This did really well in like grammar nerd Twitter. This is, no, I just have resting her face. I'm okay with maybe having hurt the feelings of the mustache contingent. Do you want me to talk about resting whatever face? Because I mean, it's a takeoff on resting bitch face, which is a thing that you are accused of having if your face doesn't arrange itself into sort of a pleasant, like, neutrality. I have not actually had that problem. I seem to have like whatever the opposite of resting bitch face is. This might change as I get older. I'm 41 now, but throughout my life, I seem to have had this like wide open moon face where everybody's just like, you seem nice, or crazy people on the street are like, you look like you would understand. So, you know, no matter what your face does when you're not paying attention to it, there's going to be problems. And if you have a mustache, people will just assume you're going to be molesty. So, you know, take note. The caption here is, we don't spank in our family, we just use the discipline clown. I wish I had a discipline clown. I think things would be a lot easier. Disciplining a child is you know, it's a point of contention between my husband sometimes. It's an unending point of debate with other parents. My parents are of Southern extraction. I grew up in the Northeast, but they're from Texas, so I was like fully the only kid that had to go in the backyard and cut her own switch. You guys are making way too serious a noise for that. It wasn't that big a deal. I don't make my kid do that because I'd have to make her go all the way to Prospect Park and I'd probably get arrested. I also don't spank her, like, usually. Only the clown does it. So this is a piece I did recently for the Nib. This is the caption. This like super title was Brunch of the Future. So we're looking at boiled water. Think of it as a mimosa, quote unquote bacon. Look, it's burnt and fatty. I'm just hoping it's not my dad. Hardtack smeared with the last of the Crisco. It's literally the closest thing I could find to avocado toast. You know what hardtack is. Hardtack is basically like a hockey puck made of wheat and flour, and it's, you know, it keeps really well on long voyages and or after the apocalypse. And electricity. These are two robots. One is saying, so I read this really interesting op-ed. And the other one is saying, wait, was it Tom Friedman? Because he's the actual worst. I feel like that's a conversation that's going to keep going no matter what happens. Most of my work right now is centers around the inevitable and soon to come end of things. It's weird times. Anything else to say about that? Not really. You know, the whole like threes thing, Bob really tried to ding me a lot on that too. Sometimes 3 is better, sometimes 4 is better, but he had a real thing about 3, so we went back and forth on that quite a bit. So the Nib is a website it's a cartoon website basically. They do a lot of political work and a lot of long form things. They are great. It's just thenib.com. You should definitely use your computers to look at it. This is an illustration that I did for a piece that I wrote that was, the idea of the piece was, it was from the point of view of Claire from the Breakfast Club, but as it like 30, 40 years later. So she's kind of talking about her divorce and some awful things that have happened in her life. I don't know how deep fans you are of the Breakfast Club, but it's kind of burned into my brain from childhood. So, you know, there's this scene where she puts on lipstick by holding her lipstick between her boobs and puts it on, which is a completely different thing when you're a middle-aged woman. It's less cute.
Sorry, are we allowed to react to Evan?
Yeah.
Sure, be my guest.
Yes.
So, I don't article Molly Ringwald wrote on showing the Breakfast Club.
I did, yeah, that was,
having to have many talks.
yeah.
Like how messed up like those gender dynamics are.
Totally. I feel like there's a lot of things that, like, as I show them to my kids, and these aren't even movies I starred in because I didn't star in any, that I'm gonna have to really explain to my kids.
We're live on Facebook right now, so that's
right. Well, Facebook, guess what? So yeah, no, I wrote this before, like a long time ago for a friend who had this John Hughes night where people wrote pieces kind of based on various John Hughes things. And actually, fun fact, the first thing I wrote was about Revenge of the Nerds, and I gave it to him, and he's like, it's not a John Hughes movie. Shit! Like, in my mind, every sex romp that came out in the 80s was a John Hughes movie. Not so. This is a frame from an animation that I worked on about gun control. It was like a 2-minute snippet of Christian Gillibrand talking about gun control that was animated actually through the nib. And yeah, hopefully I don't have to explain why gun control is a good idea to anyone in this room. But if so, let's talk later and have that fun and awesome conversation. Are any of you my dad? All right. This is a page from my book, which I believe we have for sale, so this will either make you want to buy it or never want to talk to me or think about me again. The title here is Postpartum Activities. First frame says, see how bad you can freak out your husband because you're a crazy lady now. It's me saying, please be careful, I don't want you to die. And my husband saying, I am just going to the deli. Second frame is, take a poke around and see what historical disasters your lady bits remind you of. Chernobyl. Third frame is Facebook. Fourth frame is me trying to nurse myself, and it says, you're going to try this at least once, so you may as well get it over with. Absolutely every single frame of this was completely true. So now you know these things about me. Everything else? Yes. This is a poster for a show that I do with Ophira Eisenberg. It's sort of a quarterly-ish comedy situation where we take comics who also have children and we get them on stage and they say jokes about their kids. It's not child-friendly because mostly we have mean things to say. So that is a thing that happens sometimes. And this is a piece I submitted this for the Daily. They didn't take it. I don't know why. This is about the recent and now recent again Louis C.K. situation in which he whipped it out in front of some lady comics and did a whole bunch of other really creepy things, and then lied about it for a long time, and then got caught and was humiliated, and now has come back to be on stages and is not, I would say, not staging his comeback in an ideal fashion, is my take on that. So yeah, that's another thing we can talk about after the show, if you would. Sorry. So the Daily is basically it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a daily cartoon. You submit by 9 a.m. They let you know by 10 a.m. and then you have to have it done by noon, pretty much. So it's stuff that's meant to be more timely, sort of a reaction to the news or social things that are going on. And I feel like it's a way to make the form of single panel gags a little more nimble and a little more relevant to a day-to-day thing. I mean, the stuff that's in the magazine, I think is more meant to be a little more timeless. Like, I mean, I think the hopes is that like something that's funny now might be funny 5 years from now or in the future when we are all dead. But the Daily is, for day-to-day stuff. Like, hopefully we won't still be talking about Louis C.K.'s dick in 10 years, but who knows? I think that's it.
something different now. Emily, I'm going to ask you to move over there.
Sure. I can also click away from this.
I don't see
Oh,
anything.
or
no,
can
my
I?
desktop, no.
I broke everything. Sorry.
I don't know if anybody know, I do a lot of live drawing now on my iPad. I go to events and I live draw for people. I've done it for the New Yorker, I do it for CBS, I do it for whoever will pay me. But I'm not getting paid tonight. But I thought I would have these wonderful cartoonists answer a few more questions and talk amongst themselves while I live draw them, and you'll be able to watch me do it on the screen. That's the high technology here at the Society of Illustrators. But I know there's a lot of questions we haven't gotten to, like why, things that I was wanting to ask you, like how you got into this business, why are you cartoonists, how hard was it to get into the New Yorker, and how hard is it now to do what you do? So can you do that? Can you talk amongst yourselves?
You guys. Anyway.
Take another one of these. Take another one.
I'm going to talk to each other and
I guess we can't.
out towards the audience.
Okay.
And I want to say something that will deflect attention away from myself. I remember seeing, this is before I even, I guess, got really into cartooning, but I saw, there was a piece on 60 Minutes in, maybe it was just before 2008 or 2006. No, with you, Emily, Flake.
Yeah.
Submitting cartoons to Bob Mankoff, the prior cartoon editor. And it was just sort of this short thing at the end of 60 Minutes, like every so often there would be a documentary or just something on a 60 Minutes type show that was like pulling aside the mysterious curtain that was the New Yorker cartooning department, because there's always been like this sort of like, not even sort of, like a mythology about it, or and I think this was like definitely encouraged like by the New Yorker and just like by the culture around it. But I just remember so vividly, and I just probably had some kind of serious drawing practice at that point, even though that didn't get started until later. But, and I don't even think I had seen Lulu 8-Ball yet. That's Emily's script that ran in Baltimore City paper for a long time. But it was, I don't know, I don't think it was really the draw of anything for me in particular. It was
Are you about to say that I de-glamorize New Yorker cartooning for you? Because that's fair.
No, it wasn't de-glamorizing, and it wasn't familiarizing. I think it was just like, I think I saw your meeting with Bob, and I was like maybe annoyed on your behalf, because you presented this, you were pitching a cartoon that was two monsters like destroying a city.
Right.
And it was like Godzilla and King Kong, and I can't remember, it wasn't, there's again a Far Side cartoon with a monogrammed handkerchief that is just, again, like on the, it's a monster trope cartoon, and that was not the joke. Do you remember what cartoon you were pitching?
Yeah, it was King Kong and Godzilla fighting, and one is in Manhattan and the other is in Brooklyn, and I forget which one is delivering the line, but one is saying like, something to the effect of like, haven't you heard, Manhattan is over, some kind of thing like that. Fun fact about that cartoon, that did run, and who here knows who Marty Markowitz is? Borough President Marty Markowitz. He sent me a very insanely scrawled note saying, I love that cartoon, I would like to buy it from you. And I look at him like, oh, he's my neighbor. Like, he lives around the corner from me, pretty much. So now it's at Marty Markowitz's house.
The note was in a scroll, like
No, not a scroll, sorry, a scrawl. Like,
Oh.
like, yes, he's got mad illumination skills. No, he's got like very spazzy handwriting. Yeah.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, now I feel like I'm just pushily moderating people. But I have been in situations where you'll draw a cartoon about a topic that doesn't really feel that relevant to your life, and then people to whom that is specifically relevant to their life will contact you with joy and like they feel really seen. I have several examples of this already, and I haven't even been doing it for very long. Well, the first cartoon I ever sold was about light pollution, and it just had some people looking up the night sky and talking about light pollution. And it ran like a really long time later after I sold it, which was something that I think we've also all gone through. But so the cartoon ran, and then I got an email from this like light pollution lobbyist group. And it was like the guy in charge of it, and he was like chuffed and like happy, and he was like, "We're so happy that you're really against light pollution, because we are too. And we're so happy that like you're getting like our message out." And he was like, "Do you want to come to like this like fun like this dinner for our biggest donors at like this like mansion?" Yeah.
At a very poorly lit location.
Dark where we live. The thing about light pollution people is like they like their light, and they like to have a really like special light with like just specially made LED bulbs that make certain. I actually did learn a lot at this dinner about that. But like a lot of it is just people who are mad at their neighbors for like having a lot of outdoor lighting because they're just kind of policey like of everybody else. I did not get a great impression of the like these lighting lobbyists.
Isn't a bigger problem noise pollution?
What are you talking about?
No, like things are loud.
No, they're not.
The light pollution problem is for, I think the light pollution problem is more for like the birds, like nature, and I think especially for the birds, for the migrating birds.
Was it a bird that got in touch with you?
No.
Do you guys have other stories of being contacted like in weird ways because of cartoons? Or no.
I used to get hate mail. When I had a strip called Lulu 8 Ball that ran in the Baltimore City paper and a few other alt weeklies, starting, I want to say 2000, for about 16 years, and back when people like would actually write letters to like alt weeklies and be published, like I definitely got some mean letters, which somehow felt worse than when people say mean things like under something I put on Facebook or Instagram, because it's like they took the time to put a stamp on it. Like, yeah.
Well, that feels kind of not as bad because they are crazy. Like they like that much time. Like it's convenient for people on the internet to complain, so like maybe the rest of their life is together, which means their opinions are more credible. Is that a real fucking bad?
That's a nice way of looking at it.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm in favor of my internet boys. No, I'm definitely not. Do you guys get hate mail?
I don't get any hate mail. I don't know if maybe people are afraid that they'll hurt my feelings, or I don't think I've ever gotten hate mail, and I don't know if it means I'm not popular enough.
You're the kind of person who's so nice that you had to Google what cheaters are. Right, you hate mail. What monster?
Also, like, I feel like your cartoons get a really universal social truth, like this irreducible thing that, like, nobody can argue with you. That's my
And cats.
Oh yeah, there's nothing controversial about cats. And
except that you hypocritically don't like them.
Actually, but they just avoid me, I guess.
I've gotten like
I haven't gotten a lot of hate mail or much mail at all about cartoons, but for my book, I did get like some marriage proposals from like young Jewish men and like their mothers who like have a young Jewish man for you. That happened a few times, and then I did have like an internet troll who emailed me a lot, but that was in response to writing, not cartoons. So yeah, I think when you seem like you're trying to take yourself too seriously, maybe people want to tear you down more. That has been my experience. Like when I've done more like serious, earnest pieces of writing, like short stories, fiction, maybe there's more vitriol, but with cartoons, maybe I get a little more leeway. I don't know.
I had an internet. He was actually someone I knew a little bit in real life, like just enough for it to actually be scary.
yeah.
And he indirectly threatened to burn me at the stake.
Wait, back up to indirectly.
I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that.
I think I remember.
I hated this. I did a thing where I can't remember what I was raising money for. It was like maybe like the ACLU or something. It was like sometimes in the cycle of, the stupid world in the news, artists will do a thing where they're like, donate $25 to the ACLU and I'll draw you a picture of a cat. So it was one of those moments. And I said, donate $25 to the ACLU and this was my mistake. I'll draw you a picture of whatever you want. And that was a teachable moment for me. I've never done that again. And I got a note from this guy that I sort of know a little and already think is someone I don't want to spend a lot of time with, but he'd never done anything like that bad. So he writes in and he asks for me to draw. It was just like a New Yorker cartoon that he had that year for, and it was the familiar trope of the therapist and the dog, and he had a therapist and the dog idea. So he was like, draw this cartoon that I have an idea for, and there was a very, very long caption, and I felt exhausted by the prospect, and I said, like, hey buddy, like, just that particular thing, could we draw something else? And he was like, there was a tiring email exchange where he was like, what, you said anything? And I was like, just, like, your dog or something? And he was like, okay, why don't you draw this? A picture of a female cartoonist being burned at the stake, and there's a horde of people cheering and yelling, and the caption says, let's see if I can remember this, he didn't get the caption format right, and one of the angry yellers is like, hey, like, what did she do? And the second person is like she's a New Yorker cartoonist who didn't want to draw a therapist cartoon. And I was like,
wow.
I just blocked him, like, immediately, of course.
How about you draw him like a visit to the police? That's amazing.
Yeah. I wish I thought of that at the time. That's my story.
Have you guys gotten any good, bad cartoon ideas pitched to you? Like, they're really bad, but they're good in that sense. Because they're so bad you'd never draw it, but it makes you smile.
I only get bad ones.
My mom is
like
obsessed with.
my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom's obsessed with like the traffic, the walk sign. What's it called? The button you push.
Right.
And she's like really wants me. She really wants me to draw a cartoon about like how that is a placebo.
She's right.
Yeah, but it's not a cartoon. It's just an observation about reality.
She's right though.
It doesn't work. It's true. I don't know. Maybe there's something there.
I get random emails sometimes with like, here is my cartoon idea, but I more get my dad angry that he hasn't won the caption contest. Like I've tried to explain many times that like I'm not in charge of that or circulation. So yeah, I'm trying to think if I've ever gotten any that I'm like, that's actually not too bad. But I feel like generally speaking, when random strangers contact you on the internet, it rarely works out super well.
My boss at my old job used to send me cartoon ideas during the day.
Oh yeah, it was good.
No, it was like St. Peter. He's not here. It would always just be like St. Peter. I'm still scanning the crowd to make sure he's not here. He was really nice. He had a good relationship. But it was like, pearly gates kind of thing. Honestly, like, you could probably sell some of those to barons. Yeah.
Also, we are on Facebook Live, so yeah, we'll live on the internet forever. I mean, I'm sorry if you emailed me a cartoon idea. It was awesome.
Do you all have agents?
The question was, do y'all have agents?
Yes.
What kind of agents? I mean, there's different kinds of
I do
agents.
not have an agent.
Literary agents,
I
right?
have a literary agent for my books, but not for cartoons.
I don't think they really exist anymore because there's not enough money in selling cartoons for an agent to make money off of us. Okay, yeah, we can get questions now. Yes.
I would be interested in, by now, did you develop, I'm not a native speaker. Did you develop by now an expectation of what will work for a New Yorker's page, and if so, what would be that? And connected to this one, all of you have talked about, kind of like boundaries about what would be funny and what not. Is there any taboo in your work, and this thing change in time? Like, how do you perceive, your boundaries about your humor?
Question was, have you over time figured out what works for the New Yorker? And also, are there any taboos in your mind when you create cartoons?
I do think I have a sense of wanting to, we have this concept punching up and punching down. So I have a sense of not wanting to punch down, and not wanting to make somebody the butt of a joke if I feel like they are someone in the world at this particular moment who doesn't have a lot of power.
Do you have Amy Winehouse cartoons you are trying
Only my Halloween costumes are hearing people who are unlucky at this moment. Yeah, so I think about that, just that concept of who the butt of the joke is, and if they maybe deserve to be poked at. Deserve is a weird word. Deserve is wrong, but if I would be equalizing some sort of balance by poking at them, or if I'm just like weighing on the side of things that are not necessarily rectifying any kind of imbalance that already exists. I think because things aren't funny if they're too expected. So if you're like making fun of someone who has a lot of hardship, it's just not funny because it's not fresh. It's also mean. So I think about that. I don't know what you guys.
Yeah, I don't consider that there's anything particularly taboo. Like, I don't have personal taboos. Yeah, I also don't really see much point in being mean about people who are like, have a hard time defending themselves, whatever. That doesn't strike me as like, a great comic well. But yeah, I have a sense of like, I've definitely submitted things that I'm like, no, they're never gonna take this, but it amused me. And yeah, sometimes it's a little spicier than I think they're gonna like, and sometimes it's just weird. And I sent you this one that I know you would never take it. It's just a giant kitten fish thing coming out of the water, like, and these people are on a whale watch and they're all going, ooh, and it's so dumb. It's so dumb. It just cracks me up every time I look at it. So, but yeah, I think you get a sense of, because I feel like, the New Yorker wants your voice, but they kind of want it in their accent somewhat. So, you get a sense of what is going to work and what isn't. And yeah, I would say that, when I did Blue Weight Ball, that was more like, I could be sort of unrestrainedly like in that, because they paid me in buttons. And I miss that. I miss that sometimes.
I've never done anything for Baltimore City Paper, but my friend.
And now you never will, because it doesn't exist anymore.
I know. I feel sad about it. Only because of the existence of the paper, not for the money. But yeah, they didn't really pay cartoonists anything. To your question, your voice and their accent is a really good way of putting it. And I also feel like erring on the side of like putting the spicier ones in has been my way of dealing with that. Because once in a while, like you sell one of the spicy ones and then you're really happy and vindicated. But also, I don't know. I feel pretty satisfied. I don't think it is like working with this very specific market has like changed my voice or anything like that. I don't feel like anything negative has happened like inside that like made me like lose my soul or anything like that. Because there's not a huge market for this particular style of cartoon, but if you're driven to do it, I guess you're still gonna do it.
One woman on the internet said that she she was a fan of Emily Flake's humor in Lou 8 Ball, but found the combination of my sense of humor and the New Yorker toxic.
How?
I don't know. This was just something it was a Goodreads review, because I didn't like try to find her and be like, what do you mean by that?
It's so inscrutable.
But yeah, that was,
She probably didn't like your sense of humor in the New Yorker.
right.
But,
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, maybe she,
Toxic. Maybe that sounds like a personal problem.
yeah. For me, yeah.
It's between you and her.
Yeah.
I think she's like in your life.
I think historically the New Yorker has always been looking for people with specific voices, you know? And we're not just joke tellers. We are, but we aren't, you know? We're people who have a way of looking at the world, and that's what they're looking for.
No, I was just gonna say, the longer I've drawn cartoons, the more I feel like I found my own voice, and I think that is what they want. And I think it helps if you have lived in New York. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's helped me because even though I haven't lived in Manhattan for several years, it sort of stays with you. You can always draw jokes about Manhattan, even if you're not suffering in the subway at all. Like, you already know what it's like. And then also, I guess I feel like I don't have that many boundaries, except I don't have that much range. My cartoons aren't that extreme. So, but I do, I don't know what I was gonna say, but I do find that the longer I have drawn cartoons, though, I feel like I'm a better judge of my cartoons. Like I go, this wouldn't work for the New Yorker, or it's not enough of me in it. So, and I don't know how that came about, but I feel like I'm a better objective judge of my cartoons than I used to be than when I first started out.
I'm curious to what extent, if at all, any of you are conscious of representation in your cartoons, whether that's drawing a woman in a profession that's traditionally dominated by men, drawing a non-hetero couple, or an ethnically and racially diverse cast of characters. Is that something you think about? And yeah.
Did everybody hear the question?
Non-stop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you repeat the question? Was that one of you?
Oh, sorry, the question was whether or not we think about representation in the cartoons that we draw in terms of gender, race, et cetera, et cetera. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
And then how that manifests, like how do you make decisions about that? How do you think of it?
It's complicated. I mean, for me personally, unless there's something that has to do, and this is a reflection of my identity and my politics, and also what I see is something missing from mainstream culture. Every time I draw a person, unless it needs to be a particular gender for some kind of story to work, every character is a lesbian. And that's an orientation, and I also read it as a lesbian as a gender, and I feel critical about that lack of representation. And it doesn't just have to do with, for example, seeing a same-sex couple drawn into a cartoon, and that kind of very deliberate representation is like something we see a lot right now in like a certain wave of progressivism, and I feel like I'm going to use the word internecine, and I think I'm using it right, like an in-between stage of trying to move things forward. So, I mean, to speak to that angle of representation, I just think that it's really important for queer people to draw queer people, because there's so many small textural things that are missing when it's just like a kind of tokenism, like just a gay couple being drawn to, you know, be nice, like to even things up.
That's how I felt when I was starting to draw more women speaking. It's like the same thing. We were stereotyped.
Yeah.
We were made into a certain way, and now we're not. Now we know we're not.
I think that's important what you say, like who's actually saying the caption, because I think the New Yorkers always wanted us to diversify our cartoon characters, and for a lot of people, I think maybe sometimes it just means throwing in, you know, minorities in the background.
Right.
But I always feel like it's important, like, no, like one of them should be talking, you know. And sometimes you don't want to be the one talking, because sometimes the caption, you know, you're making fun of people, of the person who's talking, so you don't really want to make fun of a certain ethnicity or race. But it's sort of, if you want to be inclusive and include everybody, you have to have them have that voice.
And I think that that's important in bringing in other voices to the magazine as well, because I think that the more people see themselves reflected and represented, the more they'll feel like, they have, they can come and have their voice there too, so, and yeah, that's super important. So yeah, I try to be conscious of that when I'm drawing as well, and not like default just to like white people.
Yeah, I also, I just want to add one more thing. I started looking at the New Yorker when I was much younger. My family subscribed, and of course, when you're younger, you're not reading the articles. You're just looking at the cartoons. So I just feel like, as a cartoonist, you're the first people. A lot of the people you reach are the younger people before they even read the New Yorker, and what they see, you want to reflect the world. So.
Totally. And I don't know, this is a really important thing that maybe doesn't come till later for like those children who are looking at the magazine. But like when there's just like, the thing of throwing some minorities in and like doing the tokenizing thing, like that's bad on so many levels. And one of them is that it seems like a problem is getting solved and that things are okay. And that leads to fewer minorities getting those art jobs or, getting those editorial jobs. And so like the way to move forward in this is to just have minorities in gatekeeper and, and creative positions.
Yeah, that's great. I just wanted to maybe add one thing, which is this is something I still struggle with, because my impulse sometimes is to think like race, gender, etc. isn't relevant to the particular cartoon or the particular joke that I'm writing. Sometimes that feels like it's true, but I wonder if that is possible.
So I don't know.
Oops, we lost our audio.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. I don't know if that's, sometimes that feels like it's the case because I'm coming from my own perspective, or if that's ever possible. Sometimes I just want all my characters in a particular cartoon to just be like vaguely ethnic. It's kind of like how most of my characters come out. They just like come out looking like me a little bit. But that's an impulse that I've had to sort of question and check. Is it really possible for this joke to exist outside of the context of race or gender or sexuality? I don't know the answer to that, but that's something I've thought about.
Can you imagine Peter Arnold thinking what you just said?
Who is Peter Arnold?
Peter Arnold is a very famous cartoonist in the 30s and 40s for the New Yorker. Beautiful, big drawings. They're beautiful, but very, very sexist in his drawings.
I don't know. I mean, I think the four of us all kind of draw, for the most part, people like figuratively. Like they look like people. Like
That's what I was going to say. Like your style gives you a different. Some people's styles might give them more room for that.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a call. Like I think there's maybe a point for different artists in their work where they're trying to make these kinds of decisions and they're trying to use different stylistic sort of strategies to, I don't know, like there's like the Muppet approach. They're like, everyone's the same, like we're all, but that's like, like we can't, that's not real. I mean, for my part, again, like my characters don't really look like actual, like they're kind of like from the Peanuts school of like having really, really big exaggerated like features. Like they look, I used to get notes back sometimes from David Remnick in the beginning saying that my people look monstrous. And I really like got mad because I was like, these are my people. What do you mean? We try to say, sir.
Yeah, we all have our people. People ask you, how do you come up with your style? Well, I don't know, it just happened. These are my people. Yeah.
But also, kind of to that point, like I can put as many ethnicities as I want into my cartoons, but it doesn't change the fact that like I'm a white lady drawing it, and that is something that I'd like to move beyond in terms of like, everything. I'd like to just move beyond white ladies in general.
Yeah, it doesn't change the fact that I am also a white lady drawing it. And so when you do the tokenism thing again, it's like you're kind of I don't know. yeah, I was gonna go back to, like, it looks like you're solving the problem, but you're really not.
Well, let's have one more question, then we really have to wrap up. One more, but if there is one more, there may not be one more. Yes,
Well, first of all, your drawing up there was great.
thank you.
Have any of you ever gotten on a political soapbox deliberately for the New Yorker?
Has anybody ever gotten on a political soapbox for the New Yorker?
Like at the office?
No, drawing in your work.
I feel like if you submit something, if you sell something to the Daily, generally speaking, it will have a political point of view more often than not, since it's usually addressing, addressing current events. So I don't know that I've ever necessarily. They won't publish my manifestos.
Right, they won't buy it. If they don't want to run it, they won't buy it, so.
Can I ask a mundane question?
Okay, one day, yeah.
Okay, I'm dying to, because I'm a cartoonist in, I don't know. Anyway, what is your favorite type of drawing instrument? And what kind of paper? I noticed you were using, I guess it's an
It's an
iPad.
iPad.
I started doing drawings on my cell, and they're great. I
Yeah,
just
so
did it myself, but I don't know if I could do it on paper or so.
Yeah,
that's
how
my
do you guys
question.
quickly,
I draw ink on paper. I use micron pens
Okay.
and just different types of paper. It depends on if it's my rough or finish, but usually copy paper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I do want to do more digital drawing, but I just haven't gotten around to that yet.
I use mixed media paper, pencils, microns, and I have a Pentel brush pen, and then I use gray wash.
Oh, great. Okay. Thanks.
Mixed media, 4B pencils. I like nib pens, but recently I try to not use microns because they get messed up really fast, and you have to buy a bunch of them. But they just came out with a plastic nib one. I like that kind.
Copic has refillable cartridges.
Copic.
Speedball dip pens, the smallest ones, Arches 140-pound hot press, and Dr. Martin's black mat.
Excellent.
And
Thank you.
Kurzweil did pen when I use paper, but then an iPad on an app called 53.
A Kurzweil pen?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
really old fashioned.
Yeah, back in my day.
Well, thank you so much.